just saw an interesting movie called Devil Wears Prada. And it's interesting because it shows what happens to people when they become fully to the extreme identified and entrenched in the ego, and how it straitjackets their spirit and they're locked in this false identity and expend all their life energy in protecting, feeding, strengthening this false sense of who they are, this false self, which is an illusion. It doesn't exist. The images and creations that we have made about who we are, it's just that. It's just images, creation, projections. So part of awakening is no longer identifying as that is who you are. It's realizing your true spirit self, your true nature. The nature that is not tossed to and fro based on what does or doesn't happen in the external world, based on what people might or might not say, based on people liking you or not liking you, based on jobs, based on money, based on prestige, power, possessions. It's total liberation. It's freedom, because no longer are you dependent on things that are external and transient and temporal. You have within you the wellspring of life, and tapping into that propels you and guides you along the spiritual path and along everyday life. And there's no longer need to worry and fear and stress about what is going to happen. You're free. The chains have been cut. And what happens is we want that all at once, and it's more like a snowball. Each and every day you practice and you observe and you say, oh my God, that is not who I am. All these thoughts running through my head, all these projections going through my head, that's not me. And that snowball slowly starts getting bigger and bigger as it rolls down the hill and awakens into consciousness. Gets bigger and bigger, and then you feel a subtle peace that, man, I am okay just the way I am. I feel love emanating within my heart. My life is transforming from the inside out instead of me trying to control my life and change it from the outside in. And when you step into these shoes, things just work out. You don't have to plan and worry and stress and fear. If planning is required, so you plan. But it's a different kind of way of being. It's just not fear-based, and that's what's liberating. Watching this movie, Devil Wears Prada, I realized, yes, it's so confining and suffocating to have to keep up all these appearances and keep up the ego. But what I found very interesting, the character named Andrea was her name, very illuminating on how she handled the situation of being a fish out of water and dealing with all these really heavy, egoic-centered people. And what we tend to do in our daily lives is we might recognize the ego in ourselves, but we react into the ego within others. So let me give you an example. If someone's rude to us, if someone puts us down, if someone says something that we don't think is true, the walls, the defensives automatically, and it's a gut reaction, automatically come up. And just as we realize the ego in ourselves and be non-reactionary to it and observe it, freedom, spiritual liberation, and inner peace happens when we don't react to the ego in others. And I think that's what this girl, Andy, did beautifully in the movie. In the beginning, she did react, and she started crying, she started to get frustrated. But as time went on, there became an acceptance of what is, of the way people are around her, that they're rude, they're condescending, they're snobbish. And she didn't try to change them, she didn't try to fight them, she just flowed with it. And taking that into our everyday lives and no longer feeling the need to react to other people's ego. In fact, I give you a challenge. The challenge is to not become defensive. And this might sound easy, but it's harder than it looks. I mean, there's times when I put this challenge on myself. I'd be at work and I'd be accused of things that I didn't even do. And I would just bite my tongue and listen. And if my boss asked me and said, "Hey, what happened here?" Okay, then I would elaborate, but in a very matter-of-fact form. And that just, again, takes such a burden off you because you no longer have to defend. When we become defensive, we're defending the ego because we know who our true nature is, can't be harmed, can't be affected by what people think, do, or say to us. So we are engaging in egoic warfare, and it's no longer necessary. So when someone is rude to us, when someone is not treating us the way that we think they should be treating us, we can become matter of fact, like, "Hey, I'd appreciate if this happened or that happened," but there's no attachment to it. Could you please handle this situation this way in the future? But again, there's no attachment to it. And I think the biggest challenge is when people criticize us. In fact, constructive criticism is the biggest gift. Allowing it, taking it in, absorbing it is the biggest gift you can give your true nature because it steadily chips away at the ego. When people criticize you, you say, "Oh, okay." Then you realize that's not who I am. So it's okay. They can say all they want. And there's no attachment, there's no identity, and we don't use people as egoic mirrors to puff ourselves up. And when you look in society and culture, friends, family, and people that you work with, you speak, and as you awaken, you begin to notice all that wasted energy that people spend in defense mode, in defending the ego, in feeding the ego, and strengthening the ego, and it's not necessary. In fact, it's a burden. And when you give that up, your energy is no longer being dissipated outward, you're going inward, and you're connecting with your true self, and that becomes the guide in which steers your life. So, from here on in, let's try defense-free living. And a strange thing happens once we become like we let the walls down. We're like Canada and America. There's no border. There's no military guards guarding the border. We're just, the walls are down. The defenses are down. What you find that happens, it diffuses the ego in other people. And what we usually do in our instinctual reaction is to, "You said this and you did this," and then we kind of butt heads. And both egos become stronger and stronger and more entrenched. But when there's a passive acceptance and not needing to change other people, the most beautiful thing happens, and it's a built-in spiritual principle. They begin to change without you doing anything but loving them and accepting them for exactly who they are. Thanks for listening.